Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam President. Once again, I give my gratitude to God for life and his guidance and protection, to our leader, the Honourable Dr. Hubert Minnis, for his confidence in me, and to my colleagues. I wish to extend gratitude for their continued support, and to my wife and daughter who sacrifice daily as I work on behalf of the Bahamian people in the Senate and throughout this country. As I believe is the case with many of us here, public life is not an easy road. Madam President, despite the difficulties associated with public life, several of us soldier on, because what we do in this place and in the public sphere, we recognize it to be a part of our life's work, a work geared to transform the human condition in a positive way. We meet this morning, Madam President, at a time when many workers at the Admelia Resort are working extremely hard to eke out a living, but are hurting because to date they have not been able to find resolution to receiving their gratuity. As many of us in here now know, the resort has become all-inclusive, and prior to that time they were already struggling. But now that it is all-inclusive, the walk-in traffic that would provide, if only a bit of gratuity directly to them, even that has disappeared. I appeal to this government to work diligently on behalf of the Bahamians who are suffering, having difficulties paying some of the most basic bills, losing their homes. Paying rent is a challenge, as they work every day to ensure a return on investment for the owners and operators of that resort. I appeal to the owners and operators to provide the gratuities that are outstanding to these workers until such time as they are able to resolve this matter. Madam President, I would stop there to ask that both the government and the owners and operators demonstrate their humanity. We meet at a time, Madam President, when police officers, much like other members of the uniformed branches, have to raise their voices in order to get the attention of politicians who they supported and on an ongoing basis protect in this country. Rather than engage these men and women in respectable conversation about the way forward for our uniformed branches, a number of them are feeling as if they are being intimidated. Even in this place, Madam President, in the last sitting, they were targeted in speech by no less than the Minister of State for National Security. The chairman of the Police Staff Association was called by name with no reference to his title, and his case was mentioned. Maybe it is the practice of diligent ministers of state for national security to follow individual cases. But it is of great concern. It is of great concern that those of us who have protection in this place on occasion use that protection to reach out and touch those who do not have similar protection. I, like our leader here in the Senate, stand in solidarity with the officers who act within the bounds of the law while executing their jobs and exercising their rights. The march that they participated in, Madam President, was not unlawful. Their statements were not illegal or unethical. Unless someone doubt, we can lay all documents on the table to verify this. Yet, the president of the Police Staff Association was targeted directly. At another time, we would lay out the case in a way that does not conflict with any ongoing matters, because we believe it is not by accident that some officers find themselves in the position that they are in. Madam President, increasingly Bahamians are becoming cynical about politicians and the role that many play in fulfilling their job to help build this country. And while I agree with some members opposite who say that some of these criticisms are unfounded and unwarranted, I must say that on occasion when you listen in the lower house and to a less extent in the upper house, you find statements being made that suggest that the public has good reason to be doubtful about the words of some political figures. Because there is a great disconnect between the Progressive Liberal Party's leadership and the Bahamian people. There is a disconnect. The PLP leadership sees one thing and the public sees and experiences something else. The PLP has lost perspective, has lost its way, and sees a different world and country than the rest of us. The fact that we are having the midterm budget debate at the end of March, when it should have happened earlier, again reinforces the lack of discipline and focus of this administration. We are unable to move the agenda along in a timely manner. Madam President, the Prime Minister's notion of success is fundamentally different than the public experience. The success that the Prime Minister attributes to his administration is probably true for those at the helm of his administration, but it certainly is not true for the rest of us in the Bahamas. As it relates to crime, for example, the government on several occasions, the leader, the deputy leader, the minister of national security have acknowledged that strategies implemented are simply not working. But nevertheless, we would hear on occasion that the figures are headed in the right direction. All except homicides, we are told. But the public experience and expression of fear is fundamentally different than the pronouncements of this government. Bahamians are fearful. Bahamians feel at risk. And what angers many Bahamians and disappoints many Bahamians is there seems to be no sense of urgency among those that are in charge of this country. It's one thing to fail in tactical or strategic planning or implementation. It is another thing for persons to observe that you're not breaking a sweat trying to work on their behalf. In fact, you're living well. As young people would say, you're living large. The PLP believe that things are good and getting better. And yet our citizens are laboring under the weight of that, the threat of the new health insurance tax, the wastage by this government, which I will come to in a very specific way during the course of this presentation, Madam President. The public is paying for consultants who add very little, in many instances, to building this country or enhancing the department or ministry that they're in. And what makes it worse, since we are talking about budget, we are unable to determine how many consultants have been hired by this government and at what rate based on how the budget has been structured. Madam President, if we were to say that this is the largest number of consultants ever hired in the history of the country at the largest rates ever, it would be difficult for this government to argue to the opposite. And if they did, it would be refreshing because we would finally have the figures. Madam President, many members of the public are made to pay their taxes. Their services are discontinued or they are paraded before the courts, while there are many prominent Bahamians who have been in the public domain. Unfortunately, we don't glory in that, have been in the public domain advocating that Bahamians pay their taxes, but they themselves are not paying their taxes, and this government is not holding them to account. Today, persons are indebted to the very corporations that they run. Only in the Bahamas under a progressive Liberal Party government can this occur. That you can owe an inordinate amount of money to the very corporation that you run, and you can browbeat the workers for excesses that you may perceive, and the public may even agree with you. But know that you have no moral authority to preach that sermon. Madam President, while Bahamians hurt, the Christie-led PLP talk about a feeling of pride and joy. In fact, they even see light breaking through clouds. Poetic. Government leader of business in the Senate would have chosen me to utter those words. Instead, they came from the leader of our country. He saw something quite powerful that at this moment does not exist among the people that he served. While Bahamians see mounting bills, empty cupboards, loss of homes, and despair, Christie's PLP see an economy that has turned the corner and sunlight bursting through the clouds. One glaring omission from Mr. Christie's midterm budget report was a candid discussion about the future of energy in this country. One of the single largest costs to the Bahamas government, to private sector, and to residents is the expenditure on energy. Nevertheless, our Prime Minister omitted any serious discussion on what might be done by this government to mitigate the adverse effects of the high cost of energy in the Bahamas, the inconsistent supply of power. Madam President, obviously it's time for new leadership. When we were last in this place two sessions ago, I raised the point that the government has an obligation to address age-old problems, even if they inherited it from the former government or the government before that. I was challenged on the point that emissions into the Clifton Bay was in large measure a result of the government. At that time, I quoted the remarks made by the minister with responsibility for the environment. I want to preface the brief statement that I'm about to make on this subject by simply saying that every emission into Clifton Bay or any other area can be tested, and it is possible to scientifically determine, for lack of a better term, the DNA of the emission. And so I find it quite amazing that we have not been able to accept, if only our share of the responsibility. Excuse me, Madam President, our government, this government, must accept that the present leakage of oil in the Clifton Pier is their responsibility to fix. One, oil is seeping into the water table and into the sea. Two, the government is failing to determine the other sources of the pollutants, which is their responsibility as regulators. We are now, Madam President, about to spend millions of dollars.
I rise on a point of order, Madam President. Madam President, my point of order is that the honourable member, probably unwittingly, has made a misstatement. He said that the government is failing to act in relation to the matter of the leakage in Clifton Bay, and he spoke about testing the source of the emissions. I think that was his word as well. Both of those are untrue statements, Madam President. The government has acted in relation to the cleaning up of the area. A consultant has been, yes, another consultant, an expert, an international expert, Morgan Oil, has been engaged, Madam President, and as the honourable member speaks, is working on the matter. And that consultancy, Madam President, as well as cleaning up, involves the necessary testing to determine the various sources of, if there are various sources of the emissions. Madam President, if I may have your indulgence and also the honourable member's indulgence, just to make one further point. I did have the opportunity to say publicly recently that these environmental matters may end up in court. Yes. I may go so far as to say are likely to end up in court. And so I would only ask members, and I do believe that the member is honourable, to be cautious about what they say so that the rights of persons who may be before the court are not prejudiced. All parties before the court. So just three things, Madam President. It is an inaccurate statement to say that the government has not acted. It has acted. The consultant is doing both things, that is the cleanup, and also a part of its remit is to do the testing, that he's referred to, and they are doing so. And thirdly, I would urge him as a responsible member of this place to be cautious in his utterances. Thank you, Madam President.
And so if you give me some latitude, I will be careful in my pronouncement, but if you give me some latitude, I will
If I may, Madam President, my concern is that obviously the member in debate has to have some latitude. My concern is that he said the government had failed to take action, and that is not the case. Now, it may be his opinion, he has a right to his opinion, but the action taken is insufficient. That is his opinion. But to go so far as to say that no action was taken is simply incorrect, Madam President. I sit at the cabinet table. He didn't call the name of who the person he spoke to, and I know that the cabinet made a decision, Madam President, on the matter.
If I may, Madam President, so that we don't belabor this point, because I wish to lay out the argument. In my estimation, Madam President, insufficient action or meaningful action has been taken that will result in the kind of remediation that this country desires. And yes, the problem has straddled multiple administrations, but this administration is in the chair at the moment, and I wish to demonstrate to the Bahamian people what is at stake today.
So are you admitting that the government has has taken action, but it is your opinion that it is not sufficient?
No, I've said exactly what I meant. I said clearly that the government, in my estimation, has not taken yes, it's my opinion. It's my opinion. Yes. Madam President. Sorry? 2015. You have the 15th of the 6th month, 2014.
Madam President, if I may, on a point of order, might I ask him just to put this down for a minute, Madam President?
Okay.
Madam President, I bought many pictures here, so obviously I'm not objecting to the concept of pictures. But in the interest, Madam President, of a meaningful debate, so that persons can understand and have a context, I would ask the honourable member to be precise before, I would ask you, Madam President, to insist, given that I have stated that the expert is there acting as we speak, as he speaks, that he give the day, the month, and the year of each picture that he produces in the Senate this morning, Madam President.
Madam President, I would give to there are some of the pictures that actually have a date on it. There are others I will give to the best of my recollection. And if they wish to dispute that particular date, they can go ahead and do so. But I will not be muzzled on the matter.
Madam President, Madam President, I am very deeply concerned, Madam President, that the word muzzled is being used in this place. Madam President, you preside here, and I can testify that there has never been an experience, I have never experienced or witnessed any time when you as presiding officer has allowed or has there been any attempt to muzzle anybody in this place, Madam President?
Madam President, the reference
thank you. I am asking the honourable member, Madam President, to abide by the rules of this place. The rules protect everybody. And I am asking you, Madam President, to ask him to insist. It's the same in a court. You can't produce a statement and not say the date. A newspaper article, you say the date and date. The picture, same thing. The day and the date and the year.
Madam President, as I mentioned, those pictures that have the exact date on it, I would mention those. All of these pictures were pretty much taken around the same period of time, and in fact, the landscape could actually give a sense clearly of when that period is. And so I would, if you would permit me, I would tell you the general period that the pictures were all taken in. And again, Madam President, if we are having this discussion in the interest of the Bahamian people, I'm just curious, what is being violated in the course of presenting pictures to simply show the remediation exercise that have taken place, which is time related. This particular exercise was taken in 2014, 2015, so we know that it does not predate that period.
Madam President, when a point of order is being made or an objection to something is being taken in a court, the person doesn't produce a picture to discuss it while it is being discussed, Madam President.
Not a problem.
I am not, again, Madam President, and I do welcome, I understand the effort and I respect the effort that the Honourable Member has gone to, and I do understand that the Honourable Member bona fides, I believe, Madam President, wishes to make a point. I am saying, Madam President, that in advancing his point, he, knowing that there has been a contract awarded, that efforts are now being made, should, in the interest of the Bahamian public and in accordance with the rules, give the date, Madam President, not the general date, because it may well be, I'm not an expert, Madam President, it may well be that in 14 days, that's as an example, a significant amount of work may have happened that makes a difference to his picture that was taken 28 days before. That's still the general time. And that is why I am asking, Madam President, that in his presentation, he give the date, the month, and the year. Madam President, I believe that that is a reasonable request and that it will assist the Bahamian public in understanding what exactly, putting a context to the entire debate, Madam President.
Okay, thank you very much, Honourable Senators. And let me just state the position of the Chair then, rather than the matter going to and fro, which is, if there is going to be presented before this court any what could be, I'm sorry, before this Senate. And sometimes I do feel like it's in a court, you know. All right. If we are going to present in the Senate, what is tantamount to support for our position? That support ought then to be complete. And by complete, I mean if it is any documentary support of a position, it ought certainly to put before us the date of the report photograph, because otherwise we leave ourselves open to some degree of manipulation, especially when we're dealing with photography, when we're dealing with pictures. We need specified time. Any document, if you lay before the Senate a document from a newspaper, I would expect to know when the publication took place. If you lay before this court a document, a letter from someone, I would like to know when was the letter written. Time, the date is very, very meaningful and significant to the overall information which is being given. So I would have to say that if any member, the member's on his feet now, but any member, if you're producing photography, please be prepared to give us the date on which it was taken.
May I ask one more point of clarification on your ruling, Madam President, please? Just a point of clarification, Honourable Member. Madam President, on a clarification on your ruling that applies to all of us. Yes. If I, for example, bought a chart of a poster board that had 6 photos on it, and there was only one photo with a date on it, Madam President, is that chart, over the 5, the camera picks up all 5. Is that chart admissible if I am not able to tell you ahead of time, before the camera goes on it, the date of the other 5 pictures?
Thank you very much, Honourable Member. Yes, I mean, clearly, if we are requiring that the dates be given, we are very aware that when we speak in this place, we're speaking to a wider public. And if there's going to be any prejudice, as I've mentioned, there can clearly be if we have undated documents before us. No document ought to be received in this place that's undated. And no document ought to be publicized that is undated. And if, yes, we have undated documents which are going to be publicized in here or outside of this chamber, put outside of this chamber, they ought not to be permitted. They will not be permitted.
Madam President, are you referring, for example, to this? That the date, what I'm saying is the pictures on this were taken on the date that is on the document.
If the pictures are all dated, then of course they're all permissible. If they're dated,
the pictures are not all dated. But let me go further and say this: that one can easily, if there's any dispute, if all of a sudden one senator's word does not, first of all, we had one standard that was met, that we have the date on it. The date is now on it. An additional argument, which I call a moving goal.
Just a moment, please. Could we just...
a moving goalpost was presented, then that if you have multiple pictures on the same poster board, which reflects the one date I've already identified, then the pictures are not admissible because every picture must have the date on it.
No, let me say, Senator, I think it's unfair to refer to it as a moving goalpost. The truth is, it does not affect the ruling. The ruling of this chamber is any document which is presented must be dated. Yes. Certainly, it circumvents that ruling. If you present a document, you present 6 documents, and you say, well, one is dated, so therefore the other 5 can come in. That circumvents what we're saying. And if you put them on a poster board, it makes no difference. Every document that is presented, whether it's a photograph or other document, ought to be and must be dated.
Madam President, the poster board with multiple pictures was taken during the last oil spill, which was carried by all media houses in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And the guests that we are looking at were persons who were at Stewart Cove, who were out diving, got up, and found oil all over their clothes and their person. All of the pictures here were taken at that time in the exact location. So what I'm trying to get a sense of is what is the difficulty that the leader opposite would have with a commentary on a factual thing that happened on a date that anyone in here can go and verify if they take issue with the date as I have presented it.
I'm not.
Don't join them in this, Alice, because this isn't. I'm just. No, I didn't. No, I didn't.
So the president would see, and it binds everybody in here. This place, it doesn't matter whether they've been public domain before, we are in this place.
You're speaking for the
and we
President
seek to, I am speaking for myself, Madam President. We seek, Madam President, to admit documents to advance a point that we are making in this place, the Speaker is seeking to make. And the President has clarified, and again, I thank you, Madam President, that when we senators do that, whether that's 6 or 8 or however many on a poster board, each such photo, whether or not it has been in the public domain before, must be dated. Thank you, Madam President.
Madam President, on the last point that I made, I wish to understand, does your ruling stand on the last poster board that I made, and was that ruling, a similar ruling, when the Minister of State for National Security presented a slew of pictures with respect to the prison, to when Senator Burrows presented with respect to the baseball field, etc.?
I rise again on a point of order. I am really concerned that the President's is being called, her ruling is being called into question.
Madam President, Madam President.
May I finish speaking, Madam President, please? Madam President, may I finish speaking?
Motive to what I said.
May I finish speaking, Madam President?
I ask a question. You are unable to attribute motives. Yeah.
Madam President, today is the 26th of March, 2015. Today, the President has made a ruling at my request made today. So I am very surprised that the Honourable Member is calling into question what happened yesterday or the day before. This is today, and the President has made a ruling for the proceedings of the Senate on their way forward. And I would urge us all to abide the President's ruling, not call into question her ruling. It is our obligation to abide her ruling and allow the people of the Bahamas to see us as honourable members of this place to abide respectfully the President's ruling.
Madam President, it is not the intention of this senator to question your ruling. I simply reference the cases where photographs were presented, and it is quite possible that I missed the presentation of dates for each of those. I do take issue, Madam President, with the leader of government business opposite attributing motive to me. The member ought to focus on her messages rather than seek to attribute motive to mine.
Yes, sorry, please continue.
The question was with respect to the last poster board, which I indicated was taken on the 15th of June, 2015, after the oil spill that affected of 2014, that affected Stuart Cole, Albany, Adelaide, etc. The Clifton Bay area. If the ruling applies to that, and I have no difficulty in getting the dates for all the others because they will be presented at some point.
Yes. Let me say, once the matter has been questioned, and I take the fact that there have been many photographs and photography presented in this place, and somewhat not of a controversial nature, nothing questioned by any member opposite, but when, as the Honourable Leader for Government Business has said, we're dealing with a matter which can be, as in her words, likely to be before a court of law, we're dealing with something which obviously evokes the level of controversy that this has, then I think there is a sensitivity that has to be exercised, and then the ruling then of the chair must abide that dates must accompany the photography to be presented. And certainly, let me add that goes for every member. Any ruling given by this chair goes for every member. And in the future, if you're going to put forward any photography which may be controversial, especially, you would know that it is expected that they would all be dated, and the date of none of them could be called into question by another member.
Madam President, thank you very much. The point that I was making that certainly would be strengthened by the presentation of the photographs, which would be presented at a later date. I will continue to make those points. One is that the government is wasting millions of dollars annually by not tackling this fundamental problem that exists at Clifton.
Again,
Madam
Mr. President, on a point of order, the government is not, by not tackling, which says that the government is not tackling or dealing with the issue. I have just already stood and said the government is dealing with the issue. Now, if the honourable member would like to say, in his opinion, what the government is doing will not be, is not completed yet, so I don't know how he can come to a conclusion on something that is not finished, that's another matter. But Madam President, respectfully, I am asking you to please protect the public interest here. How can he say the government is not tackling when this person who sits in the cabinet has said the government is tackling it as he speaks?
Madam President, in my opinion, the Progressive Liberal Party is wasting the public's money by hiring a consultant to carry out a function that they know in advance will not remediate the problem that we have at Clifton.
Again, a point of order. Madam President, let me start by apologizing for, I really believe that people's speeches should be uninterrupted if possible. But honourable member, I really can't allow you to say that the government knows in advance that the problem is not going to be dealt with.
I'm going to end the argument as soon as you decide to give me an opportunity to speak.
Madam President, that cannot be said, that the government, it imputes ill intent to the government. The government entered into a contract when the government knew in advance that it would not result. Madam President, please.
Madam President, let me, rather than put the statement first, let me lay out the argument that leads to the statement. At the Clifton Pier plant, for years, oil has been seeping into the water table and seeping into the sea in the outflows both at the east and west end of the plant. We have seen repeatedly attempts to put a screen in the water, and the screen, when placed in the water, the objective was to prevent the oil from flowing beyond that boundary. Exhibits that I'll present to this Senate shows that at no point was the screen successful in preventing that flow. But more importantly, there is nothing that this government has articulated to this public at any point that is tackling the fundamental issue at Clifton. And that is, if you look at the ground is black, and it's black for a reason. Because the oil that has come out of the wells there, they are on the surface and they drain into the ground, and there is no remediation effort that $10 million can fix. Now, unless the leader of government business opposite is prepared to lay out the mitigation plan, the environmental management plan that BEC has in place, and the amount of money being expended, I believe I could make with great certainty the statement that, in my opinion, anything that they're doing short of preventing oil from seeping into the ground, anything that they're doing short of preventing oil from seeping into the ground, because it has nowhere else to go. Anything they're doing short of that is not going to accomplish what we have in mind. So unless those documents are going to be laid on the table, Madam President, I am saying that I believe that I am correct, as others are correct, that the plan to bring in a consultant is a misuse of the public's money.
May I? Thank you, Madam President. I do thank the honourable member for the invitation. Madam President, I can freely admit that I am not an engineer, I am not an oil expert, none of that. And I think the honourable member will admit that he is not either. I think that we can both agree, in fact he has agreed, that this is a very serious matter that has existed for decades. I think we both agree that. We all agree that, Madam President. Now, what is being done. The government, recognizing how serious it is, has taken steps to engage an international expert in cleanup and remediation. And that is happening as we speak in the Clifton Bay area, Madam President. And as to his question as to whether or not oil is being poured into the ground so it can seep out, it is porous limestone. For decades, oil was poured, Madam President, into the ground at DEC. I am advised by the principals at DEC, Cabinet has been advised, that no oil for quite some time is being disposed of in the ground at DEC. None. So he's speaking about how we prevent seepage. What's there, Madam President, is going to be remediated, and there will be a remediation plan, Madam President. But at the moment, no, and for decades, not decades, for some time, and I can get the period of time, I believe it may have commenced under the F&M administration. DEC is not disposing of oil by pouring it into the ground.
Madam President, let me be clear. I've never made the statement attributed to me that DEC is pouring oil into the ground. Clearly, photographs that have been taken not just by the scientists with whom we work, but by others have shown that oil sometimes accumulates in the wells surrounding some of the tanks, and it needs a place to escape. So I'm not suggesting, in fact, I'm grateful that the government leader of business have just informed us of a practice that I did not raise, but that is useful to know, and it's unfortunate that it was happening. The point that I'm making is that based on the magnitude of the problem that exists, the dollar value of the contract that I've heard, the absence of the management plan being shared with this public that's being adversely affected by what's happening out there, the absence of that plan lead me to conclude that the monies that I have heard being spent, somewhere in the vicinity of $10 million, is a misuse of the public money given the magnitude of that problem. That's the point I'm making. And so if we are serious about addressing the issue at Clifton, then we ought to take fundamental steps in order to address the issue. The coastline in front of the Clifton plant, it shows, if you were to go into the caves or along the coastline, the wall is black all along the edge of it. The reason the walls are black, and the distance from the coastline to the closest tank would be in excess of 50 yards. In excess of 50 yards. And so if need be, I can get this specific distance. But the point is, for the walls to be black, it then suggests that the oil has seeped in and it's traveling towards the sea. That's only on one end. That is in the water table on the back end. So I only want to underscore that this is a very substantial problem. And I have no difficulty with any administration seeking to address it. But let's address it in a measured way that does not throw good money after a bad situation in an inadequate way. And I'm just suggesting that's what the government is doing. The government, in my opinion... So you're an expert. I'm certainly in this case a better expert than you at this point, Senator Sawyer. So the point that I'm making is that we ought to do the job correctly. Madam President, we need an environmental management plan that is not privately articulated by this government. We need an environmental management plan for Clifton. This is why freedom of information is important, because government officials can tell the public almost anything, and we have no way of getting the information if the information is not laid on the table. So I would be grateful if the leader of government business opposite would lay that environmental management plan. That's not a confidential document. That's in our interest. Madam President, this administration spent an inordinate amount of time in a press conference that I saw talking about the Albany development, beautiful development, and about the plans for the southwest area. The government should appreciate that if we do not remediate, we do not fundamentally address what is happening at Clifton, many of these developments that presently exist will be adversely affected. And not just Adelaide and Albany, but also going towards Jaws Beach, all of these areas affected. In fact, Madam President, the Tribune shared one of the photographs that I will present at a later date showing the range, the wide area that's covered by the emissions that are coming from the plant. Madam President, the pumping of these fuels into the water is a potential.
The pumping of these fuels in the water. I object, Madam President.
The seeping of these fuels into the water is a potential recipe for disaster. And I'm failing to understand why there is this outrage, but that outrage has never motivated the Cabinet of the Bahamas to share the facts on the matter with the public in advance of someone raising it.
And Madam President, I have to object to that. The Honourable two ministers, the Minister of Transport and Aviation, and the Minister of the Environment, the Honourable Attorney General, I think I'm still Honourable, and also, in fact I know I'm still Honourable, and the Prime Minister have all revealed to the public that we have engaged an international consultant. And I can tell you, plenty of people have already Googled the name Morgan Oil, and they know that that's an international consultant that can deliver, Madam President. Please, not share the information. The government has shared the information.
Madam President, what was shared was a consultant is coming in, and the same general statements about remediating an existing problem is very different, Madam President, than what the environmental plan is. Very, very different. And I believe that the government leader of business on the opposite side clearly understands the difference between an environmental management plan. In fact, even the details of the remediation exercise has not been outlined. Even the details of the remediation plan has not been exercised. Let me go further. Let me go further since we are on this subject, Madam President. In my estimation, in my opinion, this is the pattern of the PLP government. A pattern of behavior. Madam President, I took the time to go into the Marathon constituency. To be more precise, on Prince Charles, just in the vicinity of Cable, Bahamas. I walked the area fairly extensively, Madam President, and I took pictures I'd be more than happy to share. And I believe smartphones keep the dates. But Madam President, there are wells that are dug in a number of places in the Marathon constituency. In part, Madam President, because residents have very serious concerns about gasoline that has leaked into the water table throughout that immediate community. We have no idea of how far it has gone. What we do know is that wells have been dug in the Marathon constituency to extract, to do testing on an ongoing basis. In fact, Madam President, more than that, in one house, a room has been rented, and a well has been dug in the room of this person's house who died of cancer in order to examine the state of the water table in that particular yard.
No,
Madam President.
Madam President, on the point of order, again, this is a matter. These are all very serious matters, Madam President. Very, very serious matters. The member, just as a gentle reminder, Madam President, is going into matters that are in contention right now before the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And I believe that our rules do not allow us to express opinions about matters in contention before the courts, Madam President. I understand, I do, but I support the minister being able to make, the member being able to speak generally.
That's good.
One day maybe. Maybe, Madam President, I understand his concern to speak on behalf of the Bahamian people about these environmental concerns. But I would encourage him to make his point without, I want to use the word trespassing, into the area of the Supreme Court. These matters are in contention before the court, Madam President.
Madam President, I thought I walked that tightrope extremely well. Here's the broader point. I was simply establishing that the Progressive Liberal Party has a pattern of behavior that is worrisome for this country. That when there are very difficult, potentially dangerous situations developing, governments have an obligation to inform all stakeholders of the potential danger. That's it. Refusal to do so leaves that government open to accusations of being guilty or dereliction of duty, not looking out for the public's interest by omission or commission. I'm saying that's what the government is left open to accusation. And Madam President, this cannot be a point of order on...
Inform the public. Mr. Vincent, we have informed the public. The government has informed the public about the matter. We know the area that he's speaking about, Madam President. And this problem has been going on for quite some time, including under the F&M administration, Madam President. But that really isn't the point. The point is that contrary to what the Honourable Member is saying, the Department of Environmental Health Services and the Ministry of Health have been on the public airwaves discussing the matter, speaking about the importance of not drinking well water and all of these kinds of things. The government has absolutely informed the public. These are serious matters that the government takes seriously and has acted transparently, engaging experts in that matter also that is before the courts, Madam President. And so again, I would urge the member in making his point. It's an important point to be made, but please don't make inaccurate statements.
Madam President, for years, the government has been putting announcements on the radio warning about not drinking well water, when to boil it, etc. That's true when there's a roadside garage. That's true in the vicinity. That's true because there are outhouses next to properties where there are wells. That's also true when there are rumors or accusations of leakages from oil or petroleum companies, etc. So I'm not going down the road referencing any private company. The point that I'm making is this. It's a narrow point, very much focused on, in my estimation, actions not taken by the government that tantamount, in my mind, in my opinion, to a dereliction of duty. In other words, Madam President, if one is interested in allaying the fears of persons in the immediate area in Marathon, one would think that the first thing you would do is hold a town meeting. I believe that Senator Storr would have held a town meeting for all the residents in that area to at least apprise them of what the potential dangers are. And that's what I'm saying. And I do not believe that the government leader of business will be able to refute that. Town meetings in the Marathon constituency in the vicinity of the problem did not occur. To all the residents I have spoken to. In fact, there are businesses that are unable to get insurance coverage because insurance companies are concerned about the viability of the business, its ability to get rent, since tenants are fearful for their health. This is the reality. People are in danger of losing their property because the matter is not addressed sufficiently. And so I'm saying we have an obligation as a government, since we're talking about the budget, to protect people's assets and livelihood. And in my estimation, insufficient education has been done at Clifton, insufficient education has been done in Marathon. That is the point.
I wanted to, I can just make his point, Madam President, but he's made a statement that is a very serious one. And people have been unable to insure their homes or get tenants and so forth. I think, Madam President, that can't stay on the record unless he's able to support it, Madam President. And I would understand that he might not wish to put out in the public domain the names of people, Madam President, but I would wish that he would come into this place, Madam President, with the support. I'm quite happy with him advising you, Madam President, of the name of such a person and the nature of that problem that they had. And once you were aware of it, Madam President, I would be satisfied to accept it. But we can't make these broad, sweeping statements that are not sustainable, Madam President. I would ask him to support that statement.
Madam President, I would gladly undertake to present to you in camera the documentation from the family that is struggling today with a building that they cannot rent offices in the general vicinity. Yes, sorry? Because of this issue. Because there are wells all throughout the property, in the front and on the side of the property. Tenants want to understand what are the wells for.
Is the honourable member... Madam President, I would ask that until he has produced to you that evidence, that statement be withdrawn. Madam President, the statement should be withdrawn until he's able to support. That's a very important statement, and he should withdraw it until he is able to support it, Madam President, to you in camera.
Madam President, the second broad issue I wish to address...
May I just ask a question, though, because for my own clarification here, the matter or the area of which you speak, is the matter, as I understand it to be sub judice, is it between private citizens? The whole contention, is it one between private citizens or private enterprise and private citizens in an area?
You mean residents?
Yes. The parties too. Yes. I just want to my own clarification.
Madam
because we were talking earlier about BC, and now we've gone to this.
Yes.
And I just want to be, is this something between private parties before the court?
I will give you the category.
Yes.
No, in fact, some of the persons are not at all before the court. Most of the residents are unaware of the danger. They just know that testing is being done. Some of them have heard from, for example, the owner of the building on Prince Charles what the challenges that she and her parents were having. They became informed as a result of that conversation. The Tribune, at some point, went through the area and in asking questions of residents, some of them for the first time, heard that there was a concern about a leakage in the area that is potentially contaminated.
But this is a leakage which is being attributed to a private enterprise, a private entity.
Yes.
And is it so perhaps that there's been some compensation? Has any compensation been made to anybody from that private enterprise?
Not to my knowledge. Let me just finish the statement. Let me finish the statement. The only thing I am aware of, I will only speak of what I'm aware of, is there is one family who has a room that is being rented. The explanation is that the room is being rented in order to extract liquid from the ground and to test it. And in another room, an equipment is placed on a table to test the fume level on a regular basis. That is the only family that I'm aware of that may get. Other than that, I'm unaware, Madam President.
Madam President, the honourable member is making the point that the government has a pattern of behavior. And he's using an example of litigation that exists between private parties to drive the government into this matter. Okay?
No, that's not.
Now, Madam President, what I am saying is when he is making statements that may impute certain things to the government and also impute certain consequences that are serious, he ought to support his statement, Madam President. He's not an expert. So if he is going to say that A, 1 and 1, or A and B equals whatever, he should produce the evidence to support that. I do understand that he's now talking about a private citizen, and he might not wish, it is a serious matter, he might not wish to give the name of that private citizen out into the wide public, Madam President. I do understand that. But there is left in the public domain an imputation about something to do with the government that I am saying, Madam President, is an unreasonable and it is not an inescapable conclusion. And in those circumstances, before he is allowed to say such a thing, he ought to produce to you, Madam President, the evidence to support that. In the ordinary course, he'd be called upon to support it publicly, Madam President. I, understanding the sensitivity of the matter, would be quite satisfied, obviously, Madam President, with your determination in the matter. And until he can support the statement that because these things have happened, the persons have been unable to rent their home, and the cancer, and the imputation that somebody has cancer because of this and all of that, that should not be on the table until he can support that statement.
Madam President, if I may assist.
Just one moment,
yes,
honourable member. Because perhaps, your assistance may not be required. What I'm going to do is to allow the record to remain. However, I will ask the Honourable Senator if you are unable to produce the necessary support by the time we sit in this chamber for next sitting,
Yes.
then I would ask at that time that it be withdrawn.
Yes.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm going to the next day's sitting.
Yes.
The next day's sitting, yes, yes.
Madam, if I may, just is, I was at one point being consulted by a number of the residents who had formed themselves into an association of that Highbury Park area, which is directly adjacent to the site of the gas station. I just say that my researches into the matter indicated that the question is not really the gas, it's the additives to the gas, particularly those that were added for fuel economy reasons. That might raise questions of carcinogenic impact. It's said to form a plume which goes throughout the water, so it's not a question of gas usually staying on the top. The point I'm making though is this, and this is where I think the state has an obligation. The state has an obligation where there is just the possibility that the groundwater in that area, quite over and away outside of the boundaries of the private entity that owns the station, that the groundwater in surrounding communities, maybe perhaps for miles away, has been affected by a plume, knowing, as we all do, that most Bahamians typically have used well water. The only other issue I would say is this, at this point, on the question of legal remedy. Yes, the company has been offering some, in my view, small compensation to individuals tied in with them having their water connected to public water systems by the company. But how can somebody release a claim when the full information as to what they may have been exposed to has not been brought to their attention?
Exactly.
That is the problem. And so it is a point of contention. All I'm saying is this, that the state owes an obligation to the citizenry where there is a possibility of something drastic or pervasive to have ascertained what the facts are with the groundwater. That's my only suggestion on this point.
Madam President, absolutely, and that is the point that I was making. The state did act. The state engaged Black and Veatch, B-L-A-C-K and V-E-A-T-C-H, to act and advise on the matter, together with the Department of Environmental Health Services, Madam President, yes. And the state did publicly urge citizens who live in the area and beyond not to drink well water, and testing continues, Madam President.
Have the results of those testings been made known, if not to the general public, then to the householders? Because there's every indication that there is a greater than average possibility there may be a problem with the additives. And this is being found out in the United States. I know, and I don't want to go far in it.
A greater than average? Come on. And this is the point that I was making. These points we're not experts here. In the litigation, experts will be called. And that is why I was saying, Madam President, we're treading into dangerous territory. To the extent that there is a question, or there is a stated, and we agree, an obligation on the part of the regulatory authorities, they have acted. Those authorities have acted, Madam President.
The only point, and I understand there may be litigation, but at the end of the day, if the regulatory authority is acting in an impartial manner and has, as a result of its testing, found at least some preliminary results, they should be disclosed to the public. They are a public agency charged with the defense of the public. That's all I'm saying, Madam President.
Madam President, with your permission, I would like to bring maybe a little clarity to this. I am in the fuel business, and although I've suggested that certain people know more than me, I'm sure there are.
Is this a point of order? Is this a point of order?
Yes, a point of order. The Ministry of Works and the government is not acting in a derelict manner. They have implemented a new rule through the Ministry of Works that because they realized there was a problem and certain procedures had not been carried out over the years, there's a law now before you can get your business license for a renewal of a service station, all of the pipelines and tanks at every single service station has to be pressure tested on an annual base before your business license is reissued for the following year. I'm doing that right now in Eleuthera. It costs $5,000 per site to have that done. So the perception is trying to be created in here for the public perception that the government is derelict in its duties. That has come about through issues that have occurred in the oil industry.
Madam President, I've knocked on doors in the general vicinity that we're concerned about, and I wish not to have brought a private company into the discussion. I tried to stay and will continue to stay away from that. The point I'm making is none of the residents in that area have had a discussion with the agency mentioned by the leader of government business opposite, government business, nor have they heard from any representatives of that company. None. There's no town meetings that have been held.
Madam President.
That's what the issue is.
I'm sorry, on a point of order. None of the residents. He hasn't said, the honourable member hasn't said none of the residents with whom he spoke. He said none of the residents, and that is simply untrue. I know that the Department of Environmental Health Services, Madam President, have been in the area, have been knocking on doors, have been speaking to the residents of the area. I can't say that every resident of the area, but certainly the honourable member cannot say none of the residents of the area.
No, that's not what I said. That's not what I said.
I'm sorry, you said none.
Of whom I spoke.
That's a different matter. Would you just, if he would clarify that, Madam President, if he would clarify that he does, because I do think I heard him say none of the residents. If he would clarify that he means, if the honourable member would clarify that he means none with whom he spoke, I would be most grateful.
No, Madam President, I would permit the government leader to help me understand, permitted to explain to the public what was the nature of the discussion by environmental health with the residents. Did they, for example, say that we do not want you to drink the well water because there is a concern that there might have been a leakage that could have contaminated your water and you may be at risk? I would sit and yield to Madam AG if she can help me understand the nature of that conversation. Because they're showing up on someone's doorstep and talking to them is irrelevant if they are not talking about what the concern is. And so I yield.
Madam President, of course, Madam President, when the Department of Environmental Health Services comes to knock on your door, these are professional Bahamians who are well qualified, who have come to say that this is the state of affairs at the moment, and this is what we would like you to do, and so forth and so on. That is precisely what they have been doing, Madam President. That is their advice to me in meetings with me as the Attorney General on this matter, Madam President. And I am asking, I go back to the point that I have made, Madam President. I would ask the honourable member to clarify that he is suggesting that none that he has spoken to, as opposed to, Madam President, his broad statement that none of the residents of the area.
Madam President, I have nothing in that regard to clarify because I made the statement. Madam AG can go back to the record and would see I never made the statement she seeks to attribute to me. But what I do notice is the question was not answered. The clarification did not come as Madam AG stood to her feet. The company that represented the government on environmental health, I would put to the Senate and to members of the public, were possibly remiss in their job to hit all of the residents in the immediate vicinity. And that is a matter that any of us who are interested, I hear some members of Senate worrying about what the opposition would do, etc. I'm saying we should have concern about people's lives. So if there's a possibility that fuel is seeping into the water table and could adversely affect people's lives, any of us who are concerned about their lives would call a town meeting to tell people of the potential risk. That is the point that I'm making. And, Senator Russell, you're from Grand Bahama, where there are major companies in an area where persons are concerned. about whether or not their lives are being adversely affected. And I don't care what side of the government you're on. You have an obligation to discuss what you know and what you suspect so that they can make determinations. And our leader in the Senate asked the question, have you gotten results and have you made the results of your study of the water table public? I have not heard an answer to that. And I'm willing to yield in order to hear that answer. I've yielded in vain. Madam AG has declined to answer. Has the government tested the water table in Marathon, in the general vicinity of, let's say, a landmark, Cable Bahamas, all the houses in that area, and what were the results of the testing of the water in that area? That's the question.
President, again. And further, my mic was off. Black and Beach and the Department of Environmental Health Services, I repeat, have been in the area, have been going door to door in the area and discussing this matter with residents of the area. So to say that the government has failed to communicate with the public is simply untrue. Simply untrue.
Madam President, the perception of how things are going in the Bahamas, held by the government leadership, is very different than the public's perception. Madam President, as we look at this midterm budget, Bahamians have good reason to be concerned about how the people's money is being allocated and spent. It is important, Madam President, that any government that wishes a public to believe in its word would be as transparent as possible in terms of its allocation of resources and giving account on how the resources are spent. As it relates to BAMSI, we have heard over and over contradictory statements made by several of the principals, persons who have oversight for BAMSI. And I'll come to just a few examples. Madam President, to date, the general public, the Bahamian people, are unclear on whether or not BAMSI is a wholly owned private enterprise, or is it private and public? And if so, what is the percentage that's owned by the government or owned by a private company? There is confusion with respect to the ownership of BAMSI. Secondly, where is the business plan for BAMSI? Whenever you are about to establish a business, if the business only has $30,000 invested in it, you would still seek to establish a business plan. To date, the public is unclear on what is the nature of the business plan for BAMSI. 2, BAMSI began without the benefit of having a site plan. And the site plan is what tells you where all buildings are placed on a property. And not just buildings, other amenities. The question is, where is the plan that will help the public understand how $100 million of the people's money is going to return investment either to the public treasury or to the public-private partnership that exists? The question also is, to what extent was the Ministry of Agriculture staff a very competent group of men and women? To what extent were they involved in the planning and execution of the development of BAMSI? Also, how is it possible that checks could be issued to contractors with no all-risk insurance in place? And is the Prime Minister or Minister of State for Finance or the Minister of Works prepared to lay on the table of the House of Assembly all contracts, all insurance contracts, so that we could see at what point they were executed? Why is it that the Minister with responsibility for agriculture, and hopefully not for much longer, why was the Minister's figures off completely as it relates to the repair of the building that unfortunately burnt down? His statement was to the effect that some $120,000 to $125,000 would be needed to repair the damage done by the fire. It turns out now that the figure may actually be $5 million. $5 million. The Honourable Alfred Gray said $125,000 required to repair a building. We are now hearing from the Progressive Liberal Party government $5 million. Tremendous discrepancy. Why is it that the minister sought to misrepresent the Free National Movement's visit to Barmsey? He knows full well that all of the buildings at Barmsey is disingenuous. In fact, it is an utter untruth to suggest that we needed to find some covert way of getting in. In fact, even the farm section has a gate. On one side of the gate is a fence, the other side has nothing. In fact, a large dump truck could roll into the farm section. Dump trucks similar to the ones we are unable to explain that have disappeared from environmental health. And so, in our estimation, the minister shouldn't just be gone because he interfered with a judicial process. He should be gone because historically his pattern of communication has been questionable and he has abused power on more than one occasion. But we'll come to that in a moment. Mr. Vice President, the Free National Movement believes it is important to have food security, that it is important for us to develop the infrastructure for agriculture. But if you are interested in developing an educational institution that will train Bahamian young people in agriculture or Bahamian farmers through extension services, it only makes sense that Barmsey would have started its educational component by having an intimate discussion with the Department of Agriculture and the College of the Bahamas. No such meetings occurred. In fact, when the government was talking about the educational component of Barmsey, lecturers at the College of the Bahamas was making the point that they were not involved with the process, and a rush was undertaken to establish a memorandum of understanding. So if you're interested in education and agriculture, why exclude Ministry of Agriculture in those discussions, even Ministry of Education in setting up 4-H programs at the high school, the junior school level? And why exclude the College of the Bahamas? If you are interested in farmers succeeding, why establish a farm that essentially competes with them? Why not establish a proper marketing system and help them in the distribution of their products so that we can move away from this antiquated packing house system and a product range that has outlived its usefulness in the form that it's presently in? Mr. Vice President, the Bahamas is battling high unemployment. The Prime Minister seemed to have been surprised when even international guests to this country can quote for him the high figure as it relates to youth unemployment. It is unfortunate that the Department of Statistics credibility was brought into question by no less than the Deputy Prime Minister and the Minister with responsibility for labor, who sought to convince this public that some 35,000 jobs had been created when the Prime Minister eventually relented and acknowledged that less than 3,000 jobs were created. So when I hear discussions, Mr. Vice President, about the House of Assembly being misled, I'm saying that this is old news given the pronouncements of our Deputy Prime Minister as it relates to employment figures. When the Department of Statistics, on more than one occasion, twice, indicated what the unemployment figures were, they were taken to task. In fact, they were refuted by the same two government ministers. Two separate occasions. And to the Prime Minister's credit, in both cases he intervened and disagreed with their assertions. Are we to believe that when the Deputy Prime Minister asserted that some 35,000 jobs were being created, are we to believe that somehow he had empirical evidence that suggested that, and upon further inspection, that evidence was no longer credible? I don't know. The public has to decide. Madam, Mr. Vice President, if we are interested in generating employment, I would think, we would think, Senator Jerome Gomez would think, the government ought to invest money in small business development. Unfortunately, that is not a priority for the Progressive Liberal Party. I was pleased to see that the Prime Minister, by his presence at an event that mirrored the grant program that the FNM had put in place, that he was in fact saying, you know what, Fresh Start, Jump Start was a good idea. But now that persons who he must rely on to generate employment, since his administration isn't doing so, now that they're doing it, it is an absolutely brilliant idea. When we were doing it, it was a waste of public money. But now, others are doing it, and it is a brilliant idea. We should be about creating jobs, not firing Bahamians from jobs. And if you don't believe me, ask Lenny McDonald, who was at BAMSI until recently. Ask Micah Valdez, who were at BAMSI recently and were released. Bahamian professionals. While others can travel from halfway around the world to the land of our birth and realize dreams, not just for them, but for their children unborn. And Bahamians are being put out to pasture who are capable of executing jobs. If we are committed to the small man, and as I've heard several senators say, willing to wipe every tear from every eye, then why are we not standing up in defense of supermarket workers who have not yet been paid? Why are we not standing up for persons who have not gotten a remedy as it relates to CLICO? Where is the government, the PLP government, who fights for the small man and woman? Where are they? Mr. Vice President, the Progressive Liberal Party went as far as to hire a public relations firm to talk about how good things are in Grand Bahama and how the economy has turned. Not one PLP senator in this place would agree with that. Not one. Nor in the lower house. Not one member of parliament who wished to be candid about the state of affairs in Grand Bahama. Grand Bahama is hurting. I heard the Minister of Tourism, for whatever reason, extolling the virtues of urban renewal and the person who directs it in Grand Bahama. Meanwhile, social services is challenged with funding for some crucial initiatives. When the truth is, the configuration of urban renewal today is, by, in large measure, social services. So what we have in Grand Bahama, and let's be real, persons traveling around, ZNS has become BIS, traveling around, cameras in people's face on who is being fed by urban renewal. Social services can do that. And Madam AG, social services can do that effectively. Can do it effectively. Why are we spending millions of dollars to urban renewal when urban renewal in concert with social services can execute that function? There's an possible chance that if Madam AG was in charge of urban renewal would be duplicating the very thing that social services is doing. Isn't a possible chance. And people are being pat on the back for spending our money holding food drives when in fact that could be done through social services. That's not heavy lifting. That's not rocket science. You don't even need 3 BJCs to accomplish that. Let social services do its job. And why would an officer fly, an urban renewal officer, fly past Nassau to Ket Island to administer urban renewal? Are there no qualified urban renewal officials here in New Providence? What is that about? I would love to know. Freedom of information may tell me. The hotel sector in Grand Bahama is challenged. Memories is hiring persons in the most basic positions that Bahamians can hold. Wait until Senator Russell speaks. He'll tell you. DJs from Mexico. Name the position that Bahamians can qualify for, and I'm telling you, others have gotten work permits, we presume, because this government is about that, that they are working in positions that Bahamians can execute. I'm not guessing it, I know it. Thirdly, how is it possible for BAT to be on fuel and a government say it cares about the people? Incursion on the Hawksbill Creek Agreement. It is important that the Port Authority continues to assert the rights of licensees in Grand Bahama and to ensure that that nonsense does not happen again. Senator Russell, in your contribution, please ask, what has happened to the repair of the Fishing Hole Road? There is that bridge that is outstanding. You're in the chair now, we're out. 8 Mile Walk requires a new school. In fact, this is a wonderful opportunity for the Progressive Liberal Party to finally build a high school. It would be a wonderful thing. Recently, Dr. Davo, Minister Gomez talked about the repairs at the RAN, hoping we would forget that a new hospital was promised by the Progressive Liberal Party.
And they bulldoze the buildings that we have bought in order to create new hospitals.
Our leader in the Senate made the point that they bulldoze a building that we already spent funds for. To create additional beds for the hospital. Mr. Vice President, why hasn't the government signed off on the airport in Cat Island? Why hasn't the government signed off on the airport in Cat Island? And why is a resident with no real construction experience telling folks, including the investors, that he's going to get the contract? Does he know something we don't know? Is the violation of the tendering process continuing? Why is there...
Excuse me. I object. Is the violation of the tendering process at the airport in Cat Island that has been signed off? It's continuing? What does he mean by that, Madam President?
I can clarify for you.
Please.
Thank you, Senator Gibson.
The question raised was, there is a resident that is contending that $11 million will be spent on the airport and that they are the contractor. So I'm only asking, is the violation of the tendering process continuing in Cat Island? Meaning that in Andros, as it relates to Bamsey, members in the lower house have asked to please lay on the table the contracts. Let us see that proper tendering procedures have in fact been followed, and so I'm making the point, in the absence of that answer, one is to assume that the tendering process has been circumvented.
Not at all.
Okay.
Honourable Senator, when you make those types of statements as to whether the violation is continuing, we trust that you're prepared to indicate the violation has happened. And it's a serious statement. And so if you wish to indicate that a violation has happened, it is expected that you put on the table of the Senate information to prove that. Otherwise, do not continue and withdraw that statement as it continues.
Mr. Vice President, the government, yes, Mr. Vice President, the government has asked a series of questions of this administration as it relates to the allocation of contracts. It is my opinion that when a government refuses to provide those answers, it opens itself up. And so I wish to redirect my statement to say this. that when a government refuses to answer questions about the tendering process and how a contractor, or in the case of BAMSI, a group of contractors came to receive their contract, it leaves itself open for others to attribute motive to them. That's the point.
That's your opinion. If you wish to attribute that as your opinion,
I redirected my statement to say
do
that.
not state it as fact. And that's really the concern of the chair.
No problem.
Mr. Vice President, I would ask that he withdraw his statement. Is the government continuing? Mr. Vice President,
Thank you very much.
The Vice President is in the chair.
Okay, sorry. Honourable Senator Pintard, the chair indicated earlier that you ought to withdraw the statement that I made reference specifically to.
Mr. Vice
Because
President.
you stated, one moment, you stated it as a point of fact. That the government is continuing to violate the tendering process. Those are your words.
That's my opinion.
No, you didn't state it as an opinion initially. And so you withdraw the earlier statement and put it on the record as you stated it the second time.
I did. Mr. Vice President.
Can you, if you indicated that you did, can you, for the benefit of the chair?
I'm not going to be directed as a child, Mr. Vice President.
This has nothing to do. It has nothing to do with being a child.
I redirected my statement to say this, that when questions are asked by the members of the opposition to explain how certain contracts have been allocated, and I gave specific examples, and in the absence of those questions, the government leaves itself open. This is the statement that I am putting on the record. This is the statement. I've redirected the remarks that the Madam Attorney General had difficulty with. I've rephrased it to make this point, that the government leaves itself open to be accused of violating the tendering process.
The chair has asked a specific request of the honourable member. If the honourable member doesn't so choose, the chair will so direct that the comments be removed.
As you wish, Mr. Vice President, but I just made the point.
One second. Mr. President.
This is a point of order.
This is a point of order.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, the member is complaining that there's a lack of transparency. There's been a failure to table, as previous governments have done, on demand, all the contracts, so that the Bahamian people can be assured that proper due diligence and proper tendering processes were utilized by the government in issuing more than $25 million worth of contracts in North Andros. And he says that in the event of continued failure for the government to be transparent about what it has done with the Bahamian people's money, the government stands open to the suggestion. This is what he's saying. There's nothing unparliamentary about that.
Thank you very much.
In this place and that other place,
thank you very much, Honourable Senator.
Allowed to account
that
to
is
the
not
people
the honourable
for their money.
Please have a seat, please. That is not the point.
That's the point.
That the honourable minister, the honourable senator member indicated earlier, how you seek to reword, rephrase,
Summarize.
reintroduce.
Summarize.
The fact is clear in terms of what was stated. And the only thing the chair is requesting, or had requested, but that is, as stated earlier, the comment, unless he had determined, and he determined otherwise, that he would not indicate that those are his views. That was never the case when it was originally introduced. He introduced it as a matter of fact. However you propose or choose to introduce it yourself, honourable member, that's fine. The only thing that the chair is requesting or had requested, it was the opinion of the honourable senator that he was being treated as a child, and I regret that he felt that way, and that the chair cannot issue instructions to any member without feeling like a child, and that's an unfortunate comment, but I understand, and I truly believe that he ought to now continue, but if he chooses not to, the matter will be expunged.
Yes. I stand by the statement I submitted that, in my opinion, whenever the government of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and this PLP government has repeatedly committed that sin, refuse to lay on the table when requested by members of the opposition. And I'll give you, one example was Bamsey, the second was related to the contract held by Mr. Spit, where the question was asked, will you lay the contract on the table so that we may all examine it, to understand exactly how it was allocated, what is the nature of the contract. In the absence of doing that, the government leaves itself open to accusations that may or may not be correct. And that's more than one, so I think I've permitted that.
Honourable member, continue.
Thank you very much. Mr. Vice President, if a member of Parliament is concerned about the development of their community, and transport is a pivotal way in which you can fuel development, I find it mind-boggling that to date, 3 years after the Progressive Liberal Party has come to power, that Chet Island is still without an airport. We're spending $9 million on Carnival. We have pledged $9 million, the government has pledged to Carnival. It takes $12 million to provide potable water from the north, from Orange Creek to Port Howe, and no monies have been allocated for potable water. In Rumkey, $300,000 to provide potable water in Rumkey. Hasn't been done. To do it in phases, a few million in first year, not a few million in the second year. Sugarloaf, that again, potable water, unfortunately no commitment to providing it. Mr. Vice President, as I wrap up my contribution to this mid-year budget, I wish to say as a cultural artist, much the same way I spoke about Bamsey as an agriculturalist, that unfortunately this government has lost its way. There's absolutely nothing, Mr. Vice President, wrong with having a carnival, as we have jazz festivals, hip-hop festivals, gospel festivals. But historically, Bahamian governments have given a subvention to the organizers of these events, a small contribution to stimulate the development of that festival, which would augment all of the other existing festivals. This is the first time in the history of the Bahamas that a government has spent the largest sum ever allocated to anything cultural and elevated that event as now the premier event. You can't tell me Jonkulu is your premier event. And the monies allocated to Jonkulu pale in comparison. So that's the point. The point is, give a subvention if you wish. First of all, if you're interested in cultural development, if I was in charge of $9 million, I would create the proper infrastructure that would produce artists and artisans in various genres of the art, as opposed to planning just a major party for a short period of time. That alters, in my estimation, the identity of some things that are fundamental to Bahamians. I'm proud to be a Bahamian. This is why I wouldn't put Carnival before Jonkulu. I mean, just chronologically, it is a mistake. I mean, just in terms of sequence, it makes no sense. You listen to the songs, some of the songs, the music, in fact, artists believe they needed to change their sound just to fit into the Carnival label. Even the terms, some of the terms that are used. I believe that the minister with responsibility for culture got bad advice. If you wish to spend funds, you could have given a subvention. But promote Bahamian artists and artisans. This untruth that it is no longer important to have a name, face, recognized Grammy Award winning artist, it's just that, it's an untruth. It is important to the Commission and to this government. It's just simply failed to execute, and now they say, well, you know, it really wasn't important in the beginning. And in fact, here's what is interesting. The name, face, recognized artist was designed to put heads in bed, meaning that by them being in the Bahamas, they would attract people from around the world. You need time to accomplish that. Meaning, the reason you book your events early is to work with wholesalers and travel agents to put together the required packages to mobilize people to come to your event. So even had they accomplished it, had this government accomplished it in the last 2 months or 3 months, they still would not have gotten the benefit of people traveling from around the world to come. It would have been money ill spent. Does not make sense. And what is interesting is that if any of us in here were to attempt to hire Usher or Janet Jackson, the contract they will send you that includes the rider, the figures just happen to have been, maybe it's coincidental, maybe the prices are seasonal, the prices were different than what was stated. And maybe the figures stated in the press were inaccurate, so I can't hold the government fully responsible for that. I would only say what I heard as the purported figures by government to pay these artists did not match any private inquiry made which these artists would cost to come to the Bahamas. And the government should have been wise, through BIS and through ZNS that carries its message, should have been wise to clarify that point. Because again, Mr. Vice President, they run the risk of giving the impression that one figure is being stated publicly when privately you would find a different figure upon investigation. Mr. Vice President, for a government that came to power saying it believed in Bahamians, it has not been doing a good job demonstrating that and convincing this public. I would humbly submit that this government has an opportunity to begin to repair its reputation. One of the things this government can do is to immediately fire Alfred Gray as the Minister with responsibility for agriculture and marine resources. It is unbelievable that a minister can call...
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Chair.
Senator Bell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice President. Mr. Vice President, I believe that a statement has been made that that particular matter upon which the honourable member is seeking to raise in these chambers are under active police investigation. That being the case, Mr. Vice President, I would humbly beg the honourable member to desist from making such statements.
Mr. Vice President, it is my understanding that matters that are before the court, I am hindered from delving into the facts of the matter. This matter being referred to the police does not meet the standard that requires my silence on this issue. Now, if some rule is cited for me, I would be more than happy to govern myself accordingly. But if not, I wish to lay out the case why this government is making a mistake.
Thank you very much, Senator Gibson.
Vice President?
Please proceed.
Mr. Vice President, we are governed by the rule of law in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. And there's something called natural justice that we all understand. And I would urge the honorable leader on the other side, who is a former Attorney General, to have his members desist in this matter. I don't think that there's anybody within our borders who would be comfortable if they were charged, if they were being questioned by the police in a matter. That doesn't mean that anybody is guilty. And in fact, the Honourable Minister has asserted his innocence, as are people who are arrested in matters. It is highly improper, Mr. Vice President, that a person who is being held by the police would expect or hear anything to do with that questioning being discussed in the Houses of Parliament, Mr. Vice President. And I would urge, I think that the Honourable Member himself would be upset, and everybody is being protected under the law. Shocking.
Thank you very much, Honourable Senator. Senator Pintard.
Yes.
Mr. Chair's desire that you not proceed along that line.
Madam AG's advice.
Thank you very much.
No problem in that regard. I would only go as far as to say that the Free National Movement fully expects that before this day is out, that the Honourable Alfred Gray would no longer be a member of the Cabinet of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Mr. Vice President, many Bahamians are suffering in this country. And what they would like is to know that their government governs themselves in a way that recognize that they have citizens who are hurting. They accept that it's too late as it relates to BEC. This government placed VAT on electricity, notwithstanding the thousands of Bahamians that are without light. But they certainly expect going forward that this government is not going to continue to heap taxes upon Bahamians who are already hurting. The government claims that VAT is a complete success, though they have not had the benefit of even 3 months of reporting. Even the consultant the government spent a tremendous amount of money to bring over cautioned the government on giving these euphoric pronouncements of the success of value-added tax. I'm not going to go down that road. I'm only going to say that the euphoric pronouncement shows a disconnect, even if that were absolutely necessary. The way this administration talks about it shows a disconnect, that it does not appreciate the suffering the people are experiencing in this country. The hiring of consultants that do not produce, that are in departments interfering with pensionable employees. That's what put people out in the front of some government departments, and if challenged on a point of what, I could begin to name them. Consultants come in and serve at the grace of the minister, the prime minister who's appointed them, not to be overlords of employees, not to usurp the authority of persons who are constitutionally charged with running government ministries and government departments in an orderly fashion. Mr. Vice President, people are hurting, and what they expect is that this runaway spending by this government would stop. That if there's going to be austerity measures for the public, there should be austerity measures for ministers and those that are loyal to them, who they seek every opportunity to benefit. We notice, Madam President, in the last sitting, tremendous amount of conversation about crime and what is contributing to it. What I find interesting about that, Mr. Vice President, is that this government knows through the work that it has done over the years, knows through the relationships that it has built over the course of the last election cycle, know many of the persons who have tremendous influence at the street level. Those of us who come from those same streets have an expectation that the government would convene a conclave with the most influential young men who've been quite loyal to this government in the last general election, and discuss strategies on how we might redirect the energies of many of our young people in the inner city areas. Mr. Vice President, Mr. Vice President, when engaged with the same category of young men, we built bathrooms to put on people's houses. We created the infrastructure for lights. We worked with the streets with a view of people transitioning out of the lifestyle that they were in into a better life. The question is, well, because they got new employers who didn't have that message. Yes, Mr. Vice President, the Progressive Liberal Party is disillusioned when it says things are well, that the light is bursting through the cloud, and many Bahamians are having a difficult time surviving. It is my hope that over the course of the next few months, that the Bahamian people would make a decision to hasten the end of this administration's time in government by calling for an early election. This is a difficult period we're going through. And I believe, as Christian Master said in his most recent song, this administration is the worst ever. Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Honourable Senator.